Welcome back to Jack of All Games Tabletop. I'm Dave Wallace, and today we're talking tips for new DMs. Now, if you're into being a dungeon master or game master, depending on the RPG that you're playing, it's inevitable that probably at some time, if you're really into it, you're going to want to try to do a little bit of homebrewing, making up your own game, and creating your own characters, monsters, beasts that are going to go with it. And if you're a creative person, perhaps nothing could be more alluring to a DM than world building. Creating your own environment that you have total control of, allowing you to offer more surprises, more in-depth in different territories, and also eliminating the possibility of metagaming. Now, for me, I'm 100% artist, professional tattooer and miniature painter, published photographer, published writer, author, musician. I have no idea how to change the oil in my car. So just all art for me. And so for me, the highest level of creativity has always been world building. It's what's shaped me from a child on. Whenever people ask me, what my influences are in any art that I do, the top ones are always going to be Tolkien, George Lucas, Gene Roddenberry, Stan Lee, H.P. Lovecraft, Robert Howard. These are people who created entire worlds, new people, new races, new monsters. Some of them so in-depth in their writing that even created full new languages for their fictional characters. That, to me, is truly amazing, truly creative. And finding a place for being a world builder in many aspects isn't always the easiest, but when it comes to games like Dungeons & Dragons and other RPGs, it fits right at home. It really help you build a bigger environment, your own sandbox in which you can decide how things are shaped and what direction they're going in. It can be very alluring to anybody who's interested in being a new DM. The thing about being a world builder is that it is a labor of love, and it's possible it could take you a lifetime to really get the full satisfaction of it. I mean, think about everything that goes into the world around you, and you're trying to replicate a new version of that. There's always things that you can add to make it fuller. So the biggest question is, where do you start and how do you approach it? And if there's going to be one piece of advice that I'm going to give you throughout this whole thing that's most important, it's start small. It's really easy when you're excited about a new project to just dive into it and you kind of go crazy with it. But when it comes to world building, you can easily burn yourself out with information to the point where you end up letting it sit on a shelf for years and don't use it. Unless, of course, it works out for you that you are a DM. Even then, you're still going to want to, if you're going to want to get into your game right away, you're going to want to start on the smaller side and build your way out. So there's a couple of things that you should look at first before you even really attempt world building. Number one, since this is kind of directed more towards new DMs, is are you sure that you love being a DM and that you're going to want to continue with this? Sometimes a group of new players get together and they don't really have an experience and they elect somebody in the group to be the DM. But if you don't love it, it can be tricky because you can get sucked into being a forever DM. And if you don't love it, then you're going to be kind of bummed out by it and not really do all the work that comes with it. Some people love it. I love being a DM, but I love playing too. So it's okay to do both. But when it comes to world building, you better be sure that you really want to press into that because there is a lot of work that goes into it outside of the game. Aside from that, you also want to make sure that your players are, number one, going to commit to showing up to game night, and number two, that they like your style and your world that you're creating, which is why you don't want to go too insane right off the top. You want to start small. You don't want to be 4 games into it and already put 60, 70 hours of work into world building, only for your players to say, hey, I'm not really digging this. Can we do Curse of Strahd? So again, you don't want to go too overboard. And this is something that you can do. You can expand out as you're playing. You can if you're somebody who does a game once a week or once a month, whatever it is, my game runs every other week usually if nobody cancels on me. And it buys me time in between games to, of course, figure things out. So most people are only going to do it at the most once a week. And that gives you time in between to work on your world building. And you don't need to plan out the whole game. You don't need to plan out the whole world. You just need a couple of ideas. And my suggestion would be, if you're in that new stage where you're trying to figure out if, number one, you're going to be good at this DMing thing, and number two, you're going to enjoy world building, and the people you're playing with, that they're going to enjoy it as well. My suggestion would be to start with a one-shot. Now I'm going to go into my world, Valencia, on the screen here, and we'll talk about what I did to start and how I built out. You will see on here that this is actually, it's not even a full world yet. I still have much work that I can add to this. It's just a continent. And really, for the most part, my players are roaming around a country, the country of Valencia. And there's much information on my World Anvil page about Valencia, but tons and tons of room still for growth. When I first started with the players that I'm working in Valencia, it was about 2 years ago that I started. And we started with a one-shot. Then after that, it seemed like everyone was having fun, expanded out just a little bit more and went to a 3-game series. And from there, we went on to larger campaigns. Starting with a one-shot made it easier for me to not have to flesh out the whole world, but instead start small and work my way out. So I'm going to take you into Valencia a little bit to show you a couple of things, and then kind of talk more about how we built this out. But in my first game, let me zoom in here. Well, first of all, this is all of Valencia, as you can see. But in my first game, the players went from this little town of Redleaf to the Star Spire Temple, right next door. The one shot is basically like a lot of games work. They met in a tavern. Yes, they did. In this instance, they were called by a wizard who wanted them to come and clear out the Star Spire Temple, which had been basically taken over years before. It had once been a center of worship for people all over Valencia. And this town of Redleaf was set up on these crossroads so that way people from all over could come travel here and stay in the town of Redleaf while they went to the Star Spire Temple to worship. However, land rights had changed ownership, and 20 years previously, a guy who had taken over the land rights had become more and more dark and basically kicked everyone out, locked himself in as far as they knew. They didn't see him come out, and then finally he did come out. In the meantime, dark creatures were coming around the territory. People went disappearing, and no one was allowed access to the temple, which really hurt the economy of Redleaf. This man who'd owned the land came out, promptly died, but described a dark evil that was lurking in the temple. And so my players were called to go into the temple, clean it out, and take care of that job. That was the entire one shot. Now, I will say this. A lot of people worry about railroading players, and I get the idea. Of course, the player should have the freedom to choose to go wherever they want to go. That being said, most people who want to play D&D are going to come to your table. They want to play your game. They haven't necessarily come in with the agendas of ruining all the work you do. They want to meet your challenge. So I understand that you want to give your characters freedom to go where they want to go, but at the same time, if your game says, well, the quest is over here, and they want to go over here, and there's nothing happening there, it's going to end up getting boring. And you do have to have a point to a story. If you're just wandering around, then nothing really has to happen, and it's not going to be all that exciting. If you put the time into a quest, most decent players, they're going to want to meet that challenge and go along with you. So I don't consider it railroading if I say, here's where the quest is. So for me, starting with this, it was really simple to just make, a little basic map, with some pen and paper of the town and what it looked like and the layout of it. Once I got through that first game and realized that my players enjoyed it, I was able to build out more. And I started on my really basic look of the world. I didn't need to have this super detailed map. This map was created on Inkarnate, but I start with something simple, like just taking a piece of paper and a pen, and you can just kind of make a squiggly shape. It doesn't have to be anything exact, and make up, something that is a continent. It doesn't even have to be something that you're going to show your players necessarily at first. When you're world building, you just start with ideas. I got a basic shape of a continent of some sort or an island. Maybe I decide that, in this area I'm going to put a mountain range, and just kind of scribbling, maybe a couple of those, mark out the areas you want to do, and, decide where rivers are flowing out of the mountains, because you're going to need rivers for your cities and towns, because they need a water source. So once you got a few ideas for that, and by the way, if you show people your basic idea online, you're going to get a bunch of amateur cartographers who are going to want to tell you how messed up your rivers are. You're playing in this world with fucking dragons, and you're really worried about, if the rivers flow the right way. So don't worry about that so much. Once you get a basic idea of stuff, you can start just plugging in, spots where you want to put some major cities. Give yourself like 5 or 6 of them, just to get some ideas. You can come up with names for those. And then maybe, a couple little small towns here or there. You can always have rivers and streams that'll reach that, but just getting yourself basic ideas, different areas of, maybe up here, maybe this is a desert. It's between these mountain ranges. It could be really dry in there. Maybe up here or down here is a tundra. Maybe up here is, all forest. A lot of this in fantasy realms is usually going to be, forest areas, but just giving yourself a basic idea that you can build on. It doesn't have to be pretty. You don't have to be an artist to do it. Just something to get you started. So for your first game, your one shot, maybe start off with a small town. You don't want to have to build up a whole city for a one shot and still trying to figure out how much your players are enjoying your game. Start off with a little town. Come up with a couple of buildings that might be important. A tavern, an inn, a general store, just a couple things. This is a small little town on the side of the road somewhere. Doesn't have to be huge. You're gonna want to find a little bit of interesting information about this little town, what makes it special. You're gonna want to have a handful of NPCs, maybe 5 or 6 NPCs of people that you're definitely going to use in your game, and then somewhere have your names list ready, where you can pick up, if there's extra people that they run into, names that you can pull and assign, as we've discussed in a previous video. And you're going to need a quest. And that can be something super simple that keeps them kind of within that area, where it doesn't have to be too fleshed out, but gets them going. Once you've knocked out your one shot and you want to go to maybe a little bit bigger game, you can kind of get a feel of, hey, do my players enjoy this? Do I enjoy this? Make sure that you're having fun doing it, because the work will get progressively more as far as fleshing out your world. And as your players level up, you're going to have to come up with better scenarios for them, and stronger scenarios and beasts and things for them to face up against. So buy yourself time, a little bit at a time, to work up. In my second game, my players traveled from here in Redleaf into Jacklight Grove. Did some battle there with a couple monsters and such, and then they actually had to work their way up into the Quarter Mountains here, where they had to find some secret caverns that led to a cult that was hiding up in the mountains. So, I mean, it took them a little further. The first game went here to here. Second game only went from here to here. In this world, it's a lot more that they can do. Now, since then, my players have traveled all the way from Redleaf, which is now their home base. They've kind of set up, they've established themselves as a team, and they've set up a home headquarters, basically, right here in Redleaf, where the people know them and love them for the things that they've done before. They've got friends there, and they have a house where they work out of, and people come to them to hire them. Since then, they have traveled from Redleaf to Ingesburg. A little bit down in this, you see the Order of the Lake in there. That's one of my players that had to go there. They have been to Arwall, traveled all the way to here. They've been down here to Belton North. They have been up to Splendia, Honeywell Glen, Breckenburg, Skylark. They've been to Vreedston. They have been up near this ridge where the Black Lake is, and they've been to Delos Bay, and now they are actually currently making their way into the Forbidden Lands. So there's a lot more area for them to explore. There's millions of stories for them to be able to get into, but they have been able to see a lot, and we've been able to, over 2 years' time, develop lots of interesting stories and lots of NPCs. One of the things that I did as I went along and kind of finessed the shape of the continent and the places in it is I started making a list of, this is a list of all the cities and towns in Valencia. And, I have it on my computer, but I print it out to keep in my folder whenever I'm playing the game. This list has a name of every single town and every city. It has on it basic location on the map, whether it be South Central or North Northeast, that sort of thing. It has the dominant race for each place. And it's not saying that it's exclusive, but just in this area there are more elves than anything else. In this area there's more dwarves than anything else. I have handwritten the name of the leader of each place, which that came later. That came after I'd already kind of built this up. Basic idea of the population. The town of Amberwood has 6,000 people, whereas Ambrovia has 25,000, that sort of thing. It also has next to it a list of their military strength. This just kind of helps me. It's not really been used in the game, but it kind of helps me understand how much of a power this place is. If there was a war and they were siding with one side or the other, how much would they be able to attribute that? That tells me about the strength of the town. I have a description of the terrain, and then another handwritten thing that I established later as I was building out was what year the city or town was established. Kind of helped me build out how civilization spread across this continent. In my mind, I can look at this and I can know, yeah, this is the oldest city in Valencia. And then that also helps me with ideas of things for my timeline. And yes, I created a timeline. So I came up with a basic timeline of the history of Valencia. And one of the things that I wanted to make sure was that even though a lot of this stuff is not necessarily anything that comes up in the game itself, a lot of these things just help me to understand. It helps me put things together. I had to come up with a system for years. So I went with a time where basically the Forbidden Lands was separated from Valencia. It was one continent, and it got separated after a basic war with dragons, and a contract was signed between the dragons and the races of men and elves and dwarves to make a border for Valencia. And so after that, AWs after Valencia, that's when how I made my timeline, basically. So if you look on here, I've got different things, like I just talked about the Starspire Temple. This has when it was built, and then there's other things that pertain to games. Some of it pertains to my players' history. There are wars that are mentioned. These are just things that happened at some point that maybe haven't had any effect on my players, but say maybe they run into a veteran soldier who can say that he fought in one specific war. Again, a lot of these things just have to do with Some of it has to do with my players or the NPCs that they have come across. So yeah, that kind of helps me keep things a little bit more real, a little bit more full. Makes it feel like a real world when it has a history. But these are all things that you build out over time. I probably only started the World Anvil page about a year ago and started filling in stuff. So I mean, a lot of this I was just working out on paper, just notes in notebooks. So as you're world building, you're going to need that time to really fill things out. But with that time in between games and seeing that your players are enjoying it, it's going to allow you to fill in more details. Having an idea of where your players are going or where your story is going and what options they might have to want to pursue things. This is going to allow you time to build up information on your different cities, different places, also to gather other unique things about those places. I have here, this is probably a little bit ridiculous, but this is a list of all the different places, stores and such in each town and city. So I have listed things like taverns, blacksmiths, general goods, places they can find potions and healings. Also, geological aspects, like, is there a unique mountain peak in that place? Have something about, like, who are the security guards and how is security? Is it a city guard or is it a private thing? Is there a sheriff? Places they can buy weapons. Even things like, places you could, restaurants. I've got restaurants listed in here. But this is all things that I have done over time. And in fact, when it came to the taverns, because let's face it, when it comes to D&D, taverns are important. That's just where people would meet in a world like that. So I came up with a list one day of just, when I had some downtime, typing up a list on my computer of different creative names for taverns. They weren't even assigned to any. I just put down places like, let's see, here's a tavern called Ladies Light Tavern. This city has taverns called the Paladin's Respite, or the Tipsy Revenant, Legendary Liquor, and the Torchlight Inn. And just kind of came up with this huge list of stuff. And after I had the list, I started assigning them to different cities, recognizing, of course, that in a little small town, it's probably only going to have, a tavern, whereas a major city, you want to have 4, 5, 6 of them ready in case, they want to go check out different places and meet with different types of people. So this allows you that time to build that kind of stuff out. Even monsters can show up anywhere, but you could have specific geological areas where monsters seem to come from. So these are all ways that you can build out and just make your world slowly bigger and more detailed. Like I said, it is a labor of love, and it can be a lot of work. And it doesn't have to be. I mean, it is your game. It is your world. So, I mean, take it as you want to. But if you're into world building, definitely check out World Anvil. They don't tell me to say that. This just happens to be an amazing website where you can do a lot of different stuff. You can add in characters. You can add your map that you make on Incarnate onto your Valencia page, your timelines, and all sorts of articles you can have. There's a lot of interesting stuff you can do with this and help you keep track of your world. And you can invite your players then to follow, and they can actually do their own research as it becomes available. They can look into it, and you can keep certain aspects of it public to where they can read it, but you can also keep certain aspects of it private on your World Anvil page. It's a really cool thing for a DM, so check it out. Highly recommend it. Like I said, if there's one thing I can just stress this again, start small. Don't burn yourself out. You got time. If you find yourself enjoying being a DM and you're a creative person, world building is going to be highly satisfying. I guarantee that. All right, I hope this was helpful for you guys. And until next time, get out there and roll some dice. Hey gamers, thanks again for watching. I really do appreciate all the support. It's one of the things I know that I can count on with the gaming community at large. This is, of course, to the point where I got to ask you to like it, hit that subscribe button, and maybe share this with a friend. If you are a game designer, or maybe starting your own gaming company, and you want to do a little bit of cross promotion, maybe you got a prototype that you want me to check out and talk about on the show, definitely let me know. And of course, for all questions, suggestions, and corrections, there's all kinds of ways to get a hold of me. Probably the easiest one is just comment below. You can also send me an email at jackofallgamestt@gmail.com. The T stands for tabletop. And if you'd like to take a look at my commissioned miniature paint jobs, or even some of the other stuff in my life like photography or tattooing, which is what I do for my day job, go check it out on Instagram at Art of Wallace. Thanks again, and I'll see you in the next episode.